August 12th, 1974. Abandoned mine shaft number 7, Harlan County, Kentucky. Dr. Silas Crowley, 28 years old, company physician for Consolidated Coal. He found her bleeding out in the darkness.
Stay with me.
300
you hear me?
feet below the surface.
My leg, I can't
where
move.
No one had
This
any
whole
business
section is
being.
coming down. Help
The
me get him
woman,
up.
32,
Move!
unconscious, shrapnel wounds hemorrhaging into her abdominal cavity. The orders from Consolidated's owners came through clear on the crackling radio. Let her die. But Silas Crowley had taken an oath. The same oath his father had taken. The same oath that had defined 3 generations of healers in the Crowley family. First, do no harm. 47 miners would live because he chose that oath over orders. This is the story of how mercy became revolution. The mountains of eastern Kentucky rose like the broken backs of ancient Ron, their slopes thick with oak and pine, their bellies hollowed out by 100 years of men with picks and dynamite and desperation. Harlan County sat in a valley so narrow the sun only touched the bottom for 4 hours a day in winter. The coal seams ran deep here. Black gold, they called it. Black death, the miner's widow said. The Consolidated Coal Company owned 11,000 acres, 4 active mines, in the souls of every family for 20 miles. The company owned the houses the miners lived in, the store where they bought their food, the script they were paid in worthless anywhere else. The company owned everything except the one thing they wanted most, the silence of the United Mine Workers. Silas Crowley had arrived in Harlan County on a Tuesday in March 1973, 18 months ago. Stanford Medical School diploma, still fresh ink, barely dry on his residency papers from Massachusetts General. His father, Dr. Nathaniel Crowley, had been a legend. Trauma surgeon, published researcher, the man who had performed the first successful splenectomy on a hemophiliac patient. The man who had worked himself to death at 54 collapsed over a patient's chart heart attack so massive they couldn't even get him to the OR in time. Silas had watched his father die in a hospital hallway, had watched the great Dr. Nathaniel Crowley reduced to a body on a gurney sheet pulled up over his face. No last words, no wisdom passed down, just gone. After that, Silas couldn't stay in Boston. Couldn't walk the halls where his father's ghost lived in every corner. Consolidated Coal had made an offer. Good salary, company housing, a chance to do real medicine, they said. Help working men, make a difference. What they didn't mention was the war. The clinic sat at the edge of Consolidated's company town, a cluster of identical gray houses arranged in neat rows like grave markers. The building had been a foreman's office once. Silas had turned it into something resembling a medical facility, 2 exam rooms, a supply closet. He'd stocked himself, driving 4 hours to Lexington every month to buy what he needed because the company's medical budget barely covered gauze and aspirin. An X-ray machine so old it probably gave off more radiation than it captured, but it was his. The only place in Harlan County where a man could get medical care without company permission or union dues. He kept both doors unlocked. The front door for company men, the back door for union. Everyone knew the rules. You came in hurting, Silas fixed you. You came in bleeding, he stopped it. You came in dying, he fought death with everything he had. He didn't ask which side you were on. Didn't report injuries to the company or the union. What happened in his clinic stayed there. It had earned him respect from both sides. And hatred. The company executives called him soft. The union militants called him a traitor for taking company money. Silas called himself a doctor and tried not to think too hard about the rest. The war had started small. Contract disputes, safety violations, the usual friction between men who risked their lives underground and men who counted profits in offices far away. But in 1972, when Consolidated had cut wages by 15% and eliminated health benefits, the United Mine Workers had gone on strike. Jedediah Blackjack Maddox, a coal miner who'd lost 3 fingers to a conveyor belt and his brother to a methane explosion, had led it. The strike had turned ugly. Strikebreakers brought in from West Virginia, union men blocking roads. Gunfire in the dark. 2 company security guards shot. A union organizer found beaten to death behind the company store. The National Guard had come and gone. The violence had continued. Now August 1974, the war had settled into a cold stalemate. The mines ran at half capacity with scab labor, while union pickets stood outside the gates every morning, signs in hand, curses ready. The town had split down the middle. Families divided, brothers on opposite sides. Silas treated them all, patched up split knuckles from both sides of the same bar fight, set broken ribs from picket line brawls, stitched knife wounds and didn't ask questions. He'd learned to recognize the sound of trouble, the distant pop of gunfire up in the hollows, the roar of an explosion that wasn't scheduled blasting, The wail of the mine whistle that meant accident, injury, death. That Tuesday morning started quiet. Silas had been in the clinic since dawn organizing his supply closet. He'd alphabetized everything twice already, but it gave his hands something to do. The summer heat pressed down like a weight. Even with the windows open, the air sat thick and still, carrying the smell of coal dust and diesel fuel and the chemical sweetness of the mine's waste runoff. He was debating whether to drive into town for lunch when the radio crackled. The company radio. One of three Silas kept charged. Company, Channel Union, Channel Emergency Services. He grabbed it. Static. Then a voice distorted and urgent. Mine shaft 7. Collapse. Possible survivor. The transmission cut out. Shaft 7 had been abandoned for 2 years. Unstable seams, methane pockets. The company had sealed the entrance with concrete and moved on. Nobody had any business being there. Silas grabbed his medical bag, the heavy leather kit his father had carried through 40 years of emergencies. 30 pounds of supplies, bandages, morphine, surgical tools, a blood pressure cuff older than Silas himself. He ran for his truck. The drive took 12 minutes up a logging road so rough it rattled his teeth. The entrance to Shaft 7 sat in a clearing choked with kudzu and blackberry vines. The concrete barrier had been broken open. Fresh. Crowbar marks still visible. Someone had gone in recently. Silas parked and grabbed a flashlight from the truck bed. The mine entrance exhaled cool air that smelled of standing water and rot. He clicked on the light and went in. The main shaft sloped down at a 15-degree angle. The wooden support beams groaned under the weight of the mountain above. Water dripped from somewhere deeper in. His footsteps echoed, strange and hollow. The beam of his flashlight cut through darkness, so complete it felt solid. He'd been in mines before treating injuries on site when men couldn't be moved, but it never got easier. The weight of all that earth above. The knowledge that one wrong timber, one pocket of gas, one moment of geological bad luck could bring it all down. He found boot prints in the mud. Recent, leading deeper in. He followed. The shaft branched. Left tunnel collapsed, right tunnel open. He went right. The passage narrowed. He had to duck under a crossbeam that had sagged dangerously low. The air tasted different here. Metallic. The mineral smell of coal mixed with something else. Copper. Blood. He found her in a side chamber 200 yards from the entrance. She lay on her back in 6 inches of black water. Female. Early 30s. Dark hair matted with blood and mud. Work clothes, denim and flannel, torn and filthy. A leather satchel beside her contents spilled across the whetstone. Papers. Engineering diagrams. A crushed hard hat with a miner's lamp still attached. The bulb shattered. And blood. So much blood the water around her had turned rust red. Silas dropped to his knees beside her, pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Pulse. Weak. Rapid. Thready. She was alive, but barely. He rolled her onto her side. The back of her head was matted with blood from a scalp laceration. Not the real problem. The real problem was her left side. Her shirt was soaked through. He pulled it up. Puncture wound, below the ribs. Something had pierced her there deep. Possibly a piece of rebar from the looks of the chamber. She'd fallen or been pushed onto a section of collapsed infrastructure. The wound wasn't bleeding much now. That was bad. Internal bleeding, her abdominal cavity filling up. Hemorrhagic shock imminent. He needed to move her, needed to get her to the clinic, needed to operate. But moving her might kill her if there was spinal damage. Not moving her would definitely kill her when her blood pressure bottomed out. Classic field medicine dilemma. 2 bad choices. Pick the less lethal one and pray. His radio crackled. He pulled it out. Company frequency, a voice he recognized. Harlan Webb, head of company security. Former Virginia State Police fired for excessive force. The kind of man who smiled when he hurt people. The radio hissed. Doc Crowley, you read. Silas keyed the transmit button. I read. Shaft 7. I've got a critical patient. Female. Abdominal trauma. Need immediate medevac. Silence. Long enough that Silas thought the transmission had failed. Then Webb's voice came back. Different. Cold. Doc, what's the patient's identity? Silas looked at the woman's face. Pale, unconscious. Features sharp even in distress. There was something familiar about her, but he couldn't place it. He checked her pockets. Found a wallet. Opened it. Kentucky driver's license. Name Kira Elizabeth Maddox. Address, Harlan County, Route 9. Date of birth, April 3rd, 1942. 32 years old. And there was a photo tucked behind the license. A Polaroid. The woman before him standing beside a massive man with a black beard, both of them grinning, his arm around her shoulders. Silas knew that face. Everyone in Harlan County knew that face. Blackjack Maddox, president of United Mine Workers Local 457, the man the company called a terrorist, the man the union called a hero, and this woman bleeding out in front of Silas carried identification claiming she was his daughter. He keyed the radio. Patient identified as Kira Maddox. The silence this time was different, calculating. Webb's voice came back flat. Doc, listen to me carefully. That woman is a known union agitator. She's been involved in sabotage operations against company property. She's a criminal and as a threat. Leave her there. You copy, leave her there. This is a direct order from Consolidated Management. Silas looked at the woman, at the person claiming to be Kira Maddox, daughter of his enemy, the enemy who'd sworn to destroy the company that employed him, the enemy responsible for 2 company deaths, dozens of injuries, millions in property damage. The orders were clear. This was war. In war, you let the enemy die, but Silas wasn't a soldier. He pressed the transmit button. Webb, this is a human being. I'm a doctor. I'm bringing her in. Doc, don't do this. You bring her in, you're choosing a side. You understand what that means. Silas understood exactly what it meant. It meant the end of his neutrality, the end of treating both sides, the end of the delicate balance he'd maintained. It meant making an enemy of Consolidated Coal. It meant his job, maybe his life. He looked at the woman. Her breathing was getting shallow. Minutes left, maybe. Less. His father's voice in his head, the last conversation they'd had. Silas, fresh out of medical school, asking whether to take a lucrative private practice offer or join Doctors Without Borders. His father had looked at him with those tired eyes and said, "Son, at the end of your life, you won't remember the money. You'll remember who you saved. Choose to be someone who saves people." Silas clicked off the radio. He stripped off his jacket and rolled it into a pillow for her head. Checked her pupils. Unequal. Possible head injury on top of everything else. He pulled a cervical collar from his bag and fitted it carefully around her neck. Couldn't risk spinal cord damage. Then he fashioned a makeshift backboard from a section of wood paneling that had fallen from the wall. It would have to do. He lifted her as gently as he could. She was lighter than he expected. 5'6", maybe 120. He got her onto the board and used his belt and a length of rope from his bag to secure her. Then he started the long carry-out, 200 yards through narrow tunnels, up that 15-degree slope, carrying 120 pounds on a wooden board while crouched to clear the low ceiling. His back screamed, his legs burned. Twice he had to stop and rest, setting her down as gently as he could, checking her pulse, watching her chest rise and fall in those shallow, desperate breaths. She never woke, never made a sound, just hung on to life by whatever thread remained. He got her to the truck, laid her across the back seat, drove like hell. The clinic was 7 miles. He made it in 9 minutes, blew through 2 stop signs, and nearly rolled the truck on a switchback. He carried her inside through the back door, the union door, and laid her on the exam table in his surgery. Surgery was a generous term. It was a room with a table and lights and enough equipment to handle minor procedures. What he needed to do wasn't minor. He scrubbed fast, gloved up, cut away her shirt and examined the wound properly. Puncture lower left quadrant. Deep. The object that had pierced her had missed her spine by maybe an inch. Might have nicked her spleen or kidney. Definitely damaged something because her abdomen was distended rigid, bleeding into the cavity. Classic symptoms. He needed to open her up, stop the bleeding, repair whatever had been torn. And he needed to do it alone because calling anyone would mean questions he couldn't answer and delays she couldn't afford. He set up an IV, selenium, and what blood he had. Type O negative, universal donor. He kept 4 units in his fridge for emergencies. This qualified. He hung the bags and then got them running. Administered morphine for the pain she'd feel when she woke up, if she woke up. Then he pulled out his surgical kit. The scalpel felt right in his hand. 3 years of residency, hundreds of procedures. He'd done abdominal surgeries before, assisted on dozens more. Never alone, never without backup, never with equipment this old in a clinic this far from a real hospital. But his hands were steady. His father's hands, surgeon's hands. He made the incision. Midline, clean. Through skin, through fascia, through muscle. The abdominal cavity opened under his blade. Blood welled up immediately. Dark red, venous bleeding. He suctioned it out with the hand pump, ancient equipment but functional. He explored the cavity with his fingers the way his father had taught him. Feel for damage. Trust your hands. There. Splenic laceration. Not massive, but steady bleeding. The spleen trying to kill her 1 ounce at a time. He found the tear, 2 inches long on the inferior pole. Deep but repairable. He packed it with gauze, applied pressure, waited for the bleeding to slow, checked for other damage. The kidney looked intact, the liver untouched. Just the spleen. Lucky. If whatever had pierced her had been 2 inches to the right, it would have hit major vessels and she'd have bled out before he found her. He repaired the tear. Careful sutures, small stitches. The way his father had taught him, practicing on orange peels in the kitchen because steady hands came from practice. The spleen was tricky. Too much pressure and it would rupture completely. Too little and it wouldn't hold. He worked with the delicate touch of a man defusing a bomb. Each stitch a prayer, each knot a plea. It took 40 minutes. The laceration held. The bleeding stopped. He suctioned out the remaining blood from the cavity, packed the area with surgical gauze, left a drain. Then he closed. Layer by layer, muscle, fascia, skin. The wound became a neat line of sutures across her abdomen. Evidence of trauma made clean. He stepped back, checked the monitors. Heart rate settling, blood pressure coming up. Not good but better, stable enough. She might make it. Might. He cleaned up, disposed of the bloody gauze and instruments in the autoclave, washed his hands for the third time. Then he pulled up a chair beside the exam table and sat down to wait. The woman, the person with Akira identification, lay still under the surgical drape. Her face was pale but peaceful, the morphine keeping her under. He studied her features now that she wasn't actively dying. Sharp cheekbones, a small scar through her left eyebrow, calluses on her hands from manual labor. These weren't society hands. These were working hands. He looked at the wallet again. The driver's license appeared genuine, state-issued with holographic seal. The Polaroid looked real too. Not a photocopy, an actual family photo. The front door of the clinic slammed open. Silas stood. His hand moved automatically to the drawer where he kept the .38 revolver his father had given him. Never needed it before. Might need it now. Harlan Webb walked in, 6'2", 220, all of it mean. He wore company security uniform badge on his chest, pistol on his hip. 2 more security men behind him. Webb's eyes swept the room and landed on the exam table. On the woman. Doc. Webb's voice was quiet, dangerous quiet. I gave you a direct order. I'm a Dr. Webb. I don't take orders. I keep my oath. Webb stepped closer. His hand rested on his pistol grip. You just made a very stupid choice. You know who that is? The ID says Kira Maddox, daughter of Black Jack. But I don't care who she is. She was dying. I saved her. You saved a terrorist, a woman responsible for a dozen acts of sabotage, a woman who's cost this company millions. And now she's gonna wake up, recover, and go right back to trying to destroy us because of you. That's not my concern. My concern is keeping people alive. Webb laughed, no humor in it. You think the union's gonna thank you for this? You think Black Jack's gonna shake your hand? Your company, Doc. You take company money. You live in a company house, and you just saved his daughter. You know what that makes you? A doctor. A traitor. Webb leaned in close. You got 24 hours. You get her stable enough to move, you put her in your truck, and you dump her at the Union Hall. Let them deal with her, or we will. She needs at least a week of post-operative care. Moving her now could kill her. Then she dies. That was always the plan, Doc. You just delayed it. Webb turned to leave, stopped, looked back. One more thing. You're fired. Consolidated Coal no longer requires your services. You got till the end of the month to clear out of company housing. Find somewhere else to practice medicine. Somewhere that's not our problem. The 3 men left. The door slammed behind them. Silas stood in the silence, looked at the woman on his table. The woman who'd just cost him everything. Job. Home. The fragile peace he'd built between 2 sides of a war. All gone. Because he'd chosen the oath over orders. His father's voice again. At the end of your life, you'll remember who you saved. Silas pulled the chair closer to the exam table and sat down. He had 24 hours to get this woman stable. 24 hours before Webb came back. 24 hours to figure out what the hell he was going to do. He checked her vitals again. Steady, she was going to make it. That was something. He'd kept his oath, saved a life, even if it cost him his own. Outside, the sun moved across the sky. The shadows in the clinic lengthened, and Silas Crowley, former company doctor, sat beside his patient and waited for her to wake. She came to just after midnight. Silas had dozed off in his chair, head tilted back against the wall, when he heard the change in her breathing, from deep and slow to quick and shallow. Panic breathing. He jerked awake. The woman's eyes snapped open. Wild, disoriented. She tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain. Her hand went to her abdomen, found the bandages, the drain tube. Her eyes found Silas. Don't move. His voice was calm, professional. You've had surgery, abdominal trauma. You need to stay still. She stared at him, processing. Her eyes were sharp even through the morphine haze. Gray-green, intelligent, assessing. Where am I? My clinic. You were in mine shaft 7, injured. I brought you here. You're, she was trying to place him. Company doctor. Was. I got fired about 12 hours ago. That stopped her. Because of me, because I saved you instead of letting you die like they ordered. She looked at him for a long moment. He couldn't read her expression. Pain, yes. Confusion. But something else underneath. Why? Because you are dying and I'm a doctor. That's what we do. Company doctors let union people die all the time. I'm not that kind of doctor. She tried to sit up again, gasped again. He put a hand on her shoulder, gently pushed her back down. I said, don't move. You've got a repaired splenic laceration. You tear those sutures, you'll bleed out before I can get you back on the table. So unless you want to lie still. She lay still, but her eyes never left his face. What's your name? Silas Crowley. Crowley. She tested the name. I know that name. Your father was Dr. Nathaniel Crowley, Boston, trauma surgeon. You knew my father. I read his papers when I was studying pre-med at MIT. His work on hemophilia treatment was groundbreaking. She paused. I'm sorry for your loss. I heard he passed 3 years ago. And now you're here in Harlan County, working for, she stopped, reassessed, working for Consolidated, or you were. I was trying to help people. Turns out helping the wrong person costs you everything. She closed her eyes. They want me dead. They want you gone. There's a difference, maybe. She kept her eyes closed. What happened in the mine? I remember going in. I remember finding documents. Then something hit me from behind. You were in an abandoned mine, alone, looking for documents. Want to tell me why? She opened her eyes, studied him again. Why should I trust you? Because I just saved your life when I could have let you die. Because I lost my job doing it. Because right now you and I are both in trouble, and the only way either of us survives is if we figure this out together. She considered that. Fair point. She took a breath, winced. I was investigating. Shaft 7 was closed 2 years ago. Consolidated said unstable seams, but I got information that wasn't the real reason. I think they found something down there. Something they didn't want anyone to know about. Like what? Documents, evidence of safety violations, forged inspection reports, proof that Consolidated knew Shaft 4 was going to collapse before it did. Proof they let 20 men go down into a death trap because fixing it would have cost money. Shaft 4, the collapse that had killed 7 miners 2 years ago. Silas remembered treating the survivors, the burns, the crush injuries, the men who'd screamed about the company knowing the company lying. He'd thought it was grief talking, anger looking for someone to blame. You have proof of this. I had proof, engineering reports, internal memos, all in Shaft 7 hidden in an old office. I photographed everything, had the evidence in my satchel. She looked around. Where's my satchel? Silas retrieved it from where he'd set it by the door, brought it to her. She opened it with trembling hands, pulled out papers. They were soaked, mud-stained. The photographs were ruined. Water damage had turned them into blurred smears of gray. She stared at them. Her face went hard. They're destroyed. What happened in the mine? I told you I was photographing the documents. Someone hit me from behind. I fell. Must have landed on the rebar. I remember pain. Then nothing until I woke up here. Someone was waiting for you. This wasn't an accident. No, it wasn't. She met his eyes. Someone knew I was going there. Someone tipped off Consolidated. And someone tried to make sure I didn't come back. Silas thought about the broken concrete barrier, the fresh crowbar marks. Someone had opened that shaft recently. Had the woman opened it? Or had someone else? Who knew you were going there? I didn't tell anyone. This was my investigation. My proof. She stopped. Her face changed. Unless what? Unless someone was following me, watching me, waiting for me to lead them to the evidence so they could destroy it. And me. A chill ran down Silas's spine. You're saying this was a setup. I'm saying someone wanted those documents destroyed. And they wanted me dead, whether that's Consolidated or... She trailed off. Or who? She looked at him. In her eyes, Silas saw something he hadn't expected. Fear. Or someone in the Union who doesn't want the war to end, she said quietly. The words hung in the air. Silas pulled his chair closer. Explain. The woman shifted on the table, winced. There's a faction in the Union, led by a man named Garrett Voss. He's a militant, believes the only way to beat the company is total war. Sabotage, violence, bleeding them until they collapse. But I'm different. I studied engineering. I know what's possible and what's not. And I know this war is destroying us. The Union's running out of money. Families are starving. This can't be won with bombs and bullets. So what's your solution? Negotiation, real negotiation. Use evidence like the Shaft 4 documents as leverage. Tell Consolidated, we have proof of your crimes. We could destroy you with this, or we could keep it quiet in exchange for real reforms. Safety standards, fair wages, health benefits. Make them choose between prison and progress. That's actually smart. That's why Garrett Voss wanted me dead. If I succeed, if I prove negotiation works, his methods become obsolete. He loses power, so he had to stop me. Silas felt the pieces clicking together. Webb, Harlan Webb. He's head of company security. When I radioed in that I found you, he knew immediately who you were, like he'd been waiting for the call. You think he's working with Voss? I think someone opened that mine shaft. Someone knew you'd be investigating. Someone hit you from behind and left you to die. And when you didn't die fast enough, Webb made sure I got orders to leave you there. She closed her eyes. So I've got enemies on both sides. Looks that way, she laughed. Bitter, painful. Perfect. They sat in silence. Outside, Harlan County slept. The mines sat dark. The picket lines empty until morning. The war on pause until the sun rose. The woman opened her eyes, looked at Silas. They're going to come for me. You know that. Soon as word gets out I'm alive, they'll try again. Webb gave me 24 hours to hand you over. We've got about 8 left. And then I don't know. I'm a doctor, not a soldier. I fix people. I don't fight wars. You're in one now. You saved me. That makes you part of this. I saved you because you were dying. That's all. That's enough. She reached out, took his hand. Her grip was weak but firm. Thank you for choosing your oath over their orders. I know what it cost you. Silas looked at their hands, hers calloused from labor, his from surgical tools. 2 different kinds of work, 2 different kinds of strength. Get some rest, he said. You need to heal. We'll figure out the rest in the morning. She didn't let go. One more question. What? The ID in my wallet. You looked at it. You saw the name. Kira Maddox. You believe that's who I am? Silas paused, something in her voice. A test. The license looks real. The photo looks real. But in my experience, people who are exactly who they claim to be don't usually ask that question. She smiled, small, sad. You're perceptive, Dr. Crowley. So who are you really? Someone who needed Kira Maddox's help. Someone who needed to borrow her identity to get close to the evidence. Someone who's been working this case for a long time. She closed her eyes. My name is Elena Russo, and I'm very, very far from home. Before Silas could respond, she was asleep, the morphine pulling her under. Her hand went slack in his. Silas sat in his chair and stared at the woman. Not Kira Maddox, Elena Russo, whoever that was. Whatever that meant, she'd used a fake ID, had gotten herself injured, had manipulated him into saving her life. And now he was complicit in something he didn't understand. He should call Webb, should report this, should hand her over and walk away. But his oath didn't care about fake IDs. It didn't care about manipulation. It only cared about one thing. The woman in front of him needed medical care, and he was a doctor. He would keep her alive. Figure out the rest later. The sun rose on August 13th, 1974. Silas Crowley's last day as a company man. His first day as something else entirely. He didn't know what yet, didn't know how this would end, but he knew one thing. He'd made his choice. Saved a life instead of following orders. Chosen mercy over obedience. Whatever came next, he'd face it with that choice behind him. The woman who called herself Elena slept. Silas sat watch. And outside in the mountains of Kentucky, a war that had been cold was about to turn hot. Because Silas Crowley had saved the wrong woman. Or the right one. Time would tell which. Dawn came cold to Harlan County. The kind of August morning that promised heat later, but started with fog rolling down from the mountains like smoke from underground fires. Silas had stayed awake monitoring Elena's vitals through the night. At 6 a.m., her temperature spiked to 102. Post-surgical infection. He packed the incision with fresh antiseptic gauze and administered broad-spectrum antibiotics. Either her body would fight or it wouldn't. Medicine was prayer with a prescription pad. At 7 a.m., there was a knock at the back door. Silas reached for the revolver, but the voice that called through was young, female. "Dr. Crowley, it's Miriam Fletcher. Old Samuel sent me." Silas opened the door. A young woman stood there, early 20s, medical student scrubs. Earnest face. "Samuel said you might need help. I'm third year at University of Louisville, home for summer break. He said you have a critical patient and might need to leave for an emergency." Old Samuel, the 70-year-old union miner with arthritic hands that Silas had been treating, always 2 steps ahead. "You know how to monitor post-op vitals?" "Yes, sir." "Check temperature every hour. If it goes above 103, call me immediately. If she wakes, keep her calm. Don't let her move. The surgical site needs to stay immobilized." "I understand." Silas showed her Elena's chart, explained the splenic repair, left instructions. Then he grabbed his bag, because at 7:45 a.m. the radio crackled. Emergency Services channel. The voice was panicked, breaking through static. "All units, shaft 4, collapse, multiple casualties. Repeat, shaft 4 has collapsed. We need every available medic." Silas grabbed the radio. "This is Dr. Crowley." "How many casualties?" Static, then, "At least 40 trapped. Unknown, how many injured? Get here now." He looked at Miriam. "You have my number. Any change, any problem, you call." "Go, I've got this." He ran for the truck. The drive to shaft 4 took 5 minutes at speeds that should have killed him. He could see the smoke before he arrived. Black and thick, pouring from the mine entrance, like the mountain was bleeding. Emergency vehicles everywhere, fire trucks, ambulances, company security, and union picketers who dropped their signs and were pulling men from the rubble. Silas parked and sprinted toward chaos. The mine foreman grabbed him. "Doc, thank God, we got men trapped. Maybe 50. The new crew went down an hour ago. Upper tunnel collapsed. Fire in the lower shaft. We can't reach them." "How many out so far?" 16, 5 dead, 11 injured. Burns, crush injuries. It's bad." Silas found the triage area, injured men laid out on the ground. Some moaning, some silent, some who'd never make sound again. He dropped to his knees beside the first one. Burns across 60% of his body. 3rd degree. The man was conscious, screaming. Silas administered morphine, enough to stop the screaming, enough to let him die without pain because there was no saving this one. The burns were too extensive. This far from a burn unit, this man had minutes. Silas held his hand while he died, then moved to the next. Compound fracture. Femur snapped, bone through skin. Silas splinted it, called for an ambulance. This one might make it. Next, crush injury, chest compressed, breathing labored. Punctured lung. Silas found his 14-gauge needle. 2nd intercostal space. Mid-clavicular line. Pushed through, air hissed out. The man gasped, breathed easier. He worked through them, one after another. The poetry of emergency medicine. Assess, stabilize, evacuate, save who you can, let go who you can't. An hour passed, then 2. The death count climbed. 8, 12, 15. And then Silas saw him, massive man, black beard matted with blood and coal dust, being carried out on a stretcher. Even injured Silas recognized him. Jedediah Blackjack Maddox, president of United Mine Workers Local 457, the man whose daughter's name Elena had stolen. They laid him beside the triage area. Blackjack's eyes were alert despite the pain. His left leg was destroyed. Compound fracture. Tibia and fibula both. Vascular compromise. He was bleeding internally. "Doc," Blackjack's voice was a rasp. "You're Crowley, company man." "Not anymore. Hold still." Silas cut away the pant leg, worse than he'd feared. The popliteal artery was severed. Blackjack had minutes before he bled out. Silas applied a tourniquet above the knee, cranked it tight. Blackjack didn't flinch. "You're the one Webb's been talking about, the one who saved someone from Shaft 7 yesterday." "I'm the one trying to save you." "Stop talking." "Who was it? Who'd you save?" Silas met his eyes. "Someone claiming to be your daughter. Had her ID, but she told me her real name is Elena Russo." You know anyone by that name? Blackjack's face changed. Shock. Then fury. Then something like fear. Where is she? My clinic, recovering from surgery. Why, man? Because my daughter Kira is missing, has been for 3 days. And if someone's using her identity, that means... He grabbed Silas's wrist. Grip like steel despite the injury. That means Kira's in trouble. Real trouble. Before Silas could respond, the ground shook. A sound like thunder from underground. More smoke. More screaming. Secondary collapse, the rescue shafts going. Men running. The foreman yelling into his radio. How many still down there? Static. Then a faint voice. 37. 37 men trapped. Lower shaft can't reach them. 37 men. In the dark. Air running out. And no way to get them. Silas looked at Blackjack. Saw the calculation in the old man's eyes. Leader math. How many lives versus his own? You need surgery now or you lose the leg, maybe more. I'm not leaving while my men are down there. You're not helping them by dying up here. A woman pushed through the crowd. 30s, strong features, work clothes covered in soot. She dropped beside Blackjack. Dad. Blackjack's face softened. Kira. Silas stared. This was the real Kira Maddox. The woman whose identity Elena had stolen. She was here. She was real. And she was not the woman in his clinic. Kira looked at Silas. You're Crowley, the company doctor who saved someone yesterday. That's what I'm told. Who did you save? People are saying it was me, but I've been... She stopped. Fear crossed her face. I've been held for 3 days. Just escaped this morning. Someone grabbed me after I was investigating Shaft 7. Kept me in an old warehouse. I got away when the guards heard about the collapse and ran. The pieces clicked. Elena hadn't just stolen Kira's ID. Someone had kidnapped the real Kira to make the substitution work. To make sure no one questioned Elena's identity. The woman I saved called herself Elena Russo. Said she was investigating Consolidated. Looking for evidence about Shaft 4. Kira's eyes widened. Where is she, Mom? My clinic. But if she's not you, then who? The radio crackled. Union frequency. A voice Silas didn't recognize. Dr. Crowley, we have your patient, the real one, Kira Maddox. If you want her back alive, you'll come to the old processing plant. Alone. 1 hour. Don't be late. The transmission ended. Silas looked at the real Kira sitting in front of him. Then at the radio. Then understood. They had Elena, the woman he'd saved, the woman who'd stolen Kira's identity. And whoever they were, they thought Elena was the real Kira, which meant Elena was in danger. Because whoever grabbed her didn't know they had the wrong woman. I have to go, Silas said. You'll get yourself killed, Blackjack said. Maybe, but I saved her life. I'm not going to let someone else end it. He stood, grabbed his bag, ran for his truck. Behind him, Blackjack called out, Crowley, if you bring my name into this, if you need help, you use it. You saved someone who needed saving. That makes you one of us. Silas didn't look back, just ran. The old processing plant sat like a corpse on the edge of the county, abandoned for a decade. Rust and broken windows, the kind of place where bad things happened. Silas parked outside, left the engine running, grabbed his tire iron from the truck bed, wished again for his revolver, but he'd left it with Miriam in case Elena woke violent. He walked through the main entrance. The interior was vast, empty. Sunlight through holes in the roof, pigeons in the rafters, broken glass and spent shell casings on the floor. Dr. Crowley, punctual. The voice came from above. Silas looked up. A man stood on a catwalk. 30s, lean, hard, rifle in hands. 2 more men flanking him. And between them, hands bound, mouth gagged, was Elena. Garrett Voss. Had to be. Let her go, Voss. Oh, I will, after we talk. Come up, use the stairs, slowly. Hands visible. Silas climbed, each step echoing, reached the catwalk. Voss gestured with the rifle. Drop the tire iron. Silas dropped it. It fell through the grating to the floor below. Voss smiled. You're probably confused. Let me explain. See, Kira Maddox is a problem. Wants peace. Wants negotiation. Can't have that. War is profitable for the right people. So I needed her gone. But if I killed her, Blackjack would tear the county apart. Needed a scapegoat. That's you. You set this up. The fake Kira, getting me to save her, making me the enemy of both sides. Exactly. When Kira dies, everyone blames you. Bitter company doctor. Lost his job. Well, took revenge. Perfect story. Except she's not Kira. She's Elena Russo, professional operative. And I'm guessing you didn't know that when you hired her. Voss's smile faltered. What? The woman you're about to kill, not Kira Maddox. She told me herself. So whatever plan you had, it's already broken. Voss looked at Elena. She met his gaze. Even bound and gagged defiant, he ripped off her gag. Who the hell are you? Elena smiled, blood on her teeth from where they'd hit her. Someone who played you. Someone who was hired to infiltrate both sides. Someone who got what she needed while you idiots fought over scraps. Who hired you? Why would I tell you that? Voss raised the rifle, pointed it at her head. Because I'll kill you if you don't. You'll kill me anyway. At least this way I die, knowing you'll never figure it out. That you'll go to prison, wondering who really won. Voss's finger moved to the trigger. Silas lunged, grabbed the rifle barrel, shoved it up. The shot went wide, punched through the roof. Pigeons exploded into flight. Voss stumbled back. Silas tackled him. They went down on the catwalk. The metal rang like a bell. The rifle clattered away. Voss's men moved in. One pulled a knife, came at Silas. Elena, hands still bound, kicked out. Caught the man's knee. He went down. His knife skittered across the grating. Silas rolled off Voss. Grabbed the fallen knife, came up slashing. Caught the second man across the arm. Not deep, but enough. The man fell back. Voss was on his feet, pulled a pistol, aimed at Silas. The gunshot was deafening. But Voss was the one who fell, blood spreading across his leg. He screamed, dropped the gun. Silas spun. Someone else was on the catwalk. Old Samuel, holding a revolver, smoke curling from the barrel. Thought you might need help, Doc. Behind Samuel, more men, Union miners, armed. They'd followed, had his back. Voss's men dropped their weapons, raised their hands. Silas cut Elena's bonds. She stood, rubbed her wrists. Thank you, she said. You lied to me about who you are, about everything. I told you my real name. That was more honesty than most people get. Who hired you? What are you really doing here? Before she could answer, sirens. Multiple vehicles, coming fast, company security, or federal agents, or both. Elena looked at Silas. I need to disappear, now. You're injured. You need medical care. I'll manage, but I need a head start, please. Silas looked at her, at this woman who'd lied, who'd used him, who'd cost him everything, who he'd saved anyway because that's what doctors did. There's a back exit, through the loading dock. Go. She ran. Samuel grabbed Voss, applied a tourniquet to his leg. This one's going to prison. He'll live long enough to stand trial. Federal agents poured in. FBI. They'd been watching, waiting. They arrested Voss and his men, took statements from Silas and Samuel, and hours later in a federal building in Lexington, Silas learned the truth. The lead agent sat across from him. Dr. Crowley, the woman you saved. Her real name is Elena Russo, former CIA. She went private sector 3 years ago, works as an infiltration specialist. Who hired her? A mining company, Blackstone Energy. They're Consolidated's biggest competitor. They wanted Consolidated destroyed, weakened, so they could buy the assets cheap during bankruptcy. They hired Russo to infiltrate both sides, steal evidence, create chaos, make sure the war never ended. She was working for a rival company the whole time. Yes, she used Garrett Voss's plan against him, let him think he was using her. Meanwhile, she was gathering evidence on everyone. Consolidated, the Union militants, company security. She played all sides. Where is she now? Gone. We have a warrant, but she's too good. Probably out of the country. But we got what we needed. The evidence she gathered led us to Blackstone's executives. They're in custody, conspiracy, racketeering, corporate espionage. In Voss federal prison, 25 years minimum. Conspiracy, attempted murder, sabotage. The Shaft 4 collapse. He weakened those supports deliberately. Killed 15 men to keep the war going. He's done. And Harlan Webb, the agent's face darkened. Webb's dead. Samuel Hastings shot him when Webb pulled a weapon on civilians. There'll be an investigation, but witness statements all confirm self-defense. Grand jury will likely decline to indict. Silas felt something unclench in his chest. Samuel wouldn't hang for saving their lives. What about me? I broke into company property, helped a fugitive escape. The federal prosecutor has reviewed your case. Given the circumstances, given what you exposed and who you saved, no charges will be filed. You're free to go, Dr. Crowley. Just like that. Free. Silas walked out of the federal building into late afternoon sun, found the real Kira Maddox waiting on the steps. Dr. Crowley. Miss Maddox, how's your father? In surgery, they saved the leg. He'll walk again. Thanks to you. She studied him. You saved someone pretending to be me. Then you risked your life for her again. Wow, because she needed help, and I'm a doctor. That's what we do. Even when they lie to you, especially then, the people who lie that are usually the ones who need help most. She smiled. My father wants to meet you. Properly. He's proposing something. A joint clinic, union and community, free care for minors and their families. He wants you to run it. I'm not qualified to. You saved lives when no one else would. You're exactly qualified. She handed him a card. Think about it. Come by tomorrow. We'll talk. She walked away. Silas stood on the steps and looked at the card, at the offer, at the chance to start over, to practice medicine the way his father had taught him. No company, no politics, just healing. Maybe mercy did have consequences. Good ones. He went back to his clinic. Miriam was still there, reading a medical textbook while monitoring empty machines. How's the patient? Gone. She woke up around noon, said she had to leave. Thanked me for the care. Walked out. I couldn't stop her. Miriam looked worried. Did I mess up? No, you did fine. She was always going to leave. Alone in his clinic that night, Silas thought about Elena, about the woman who'd lied about everything except her name, who'd used him, who'd cost him his job and his home, who'd also exposed a conspiracy and helped bring down corrupt executives on both sides. He'd saved her life. She'd changed his. Whether that was fair, he didn't know, but it was done. The war was ending. The real war. Federal oversight would come. Reforms. Safety standards. The violence would stop because the profiteers were in prison and the militants were arrested, and Silas had a choice. Walk away or stay and help rebuild. He thought of his father. You'll remember who you saved. He'd saved Elena. He'd saved Black Jack. He'd saved 17 men at Shaft 4. He'd saved a community by exposing the truth. That was enough. That was legacy. He called Kira's number. I'll take the job. When do I start? The joint clinic opened 6 weeks after the Shaft 4 collapse, October 1974. The building had been an old union hall empty since the strike started. Now it was 2 exam rooms, a small surgical suite, and a waiting area that seated 20. The sign outside read, Harlan County Community Health Center. Free care for all. No company logo, no union seal. Just a promise. Silas hired Miriam Fletcher as his nurse. She'd deferred medical school for a year to help. Together they saw 60 patients the first week. Minors with black lung, children with infections, pregnant women who couldn't afford prenatal care. They turned no one away, asked no questions about which side of the picket line they stood on. The reforms came fast once the federal government got involved. New management at Consolidated Coal appointed by bankruptcy court. The old executives were facing trial. Harlan Webb was dead. Garrett Voss was in federal prison. The union militants were scattered leaderless. Blackjack Maddox negotiated the first real contract in Harlan County's history. Fair wages, health benefits, safety standards with federal enforcement. It wasn't everything the union wanted. It wasn't everything the company wanted. It was compromise. It was progress. Kira Maddox became the union's chief safety officer. She used her MIT engineering degree to redesign tunnel supports, ventilation systems, evacuation protocols. Mine deaths dropped by 40% in the first year. And Silas practiced medicine, the kind his father had taught him. See the patient, treat the patient, save the patient. Everything else was politics. 3 months after the clinic opened on a cold January morning, the door chimed. Silas looked up from his charts. 2 FBI agents stood in the waiting room. Dr. Crowley, we have some information about Elena Russo. They sat in his office. The lead agent opened a folder. We found her. She's in federal custody, arrested in Montreal trying to board a flight to Prague. She'll stand trial for espionage conspiracy fraud. She's looking at 20 years minimum. Silas didn't know what to feel. Did she say anything? She asked us to give you a message. The agent handed him an envelope. Inside a handwritten note. Dr. Crowley, I lied about many things, but not about this. You saved my life. I was bleeding out. You chose mercy. That choice changed everything. The evidence I gathered brought down Blackstone Energy. All of it. CEO, board of directors, legal team. 23 executives facing federal charges. The company's assets are being liquidated, profits distributed to victims of their schemes. That includes Harlan County. Turns out Blackstone owns shares in Consolidated. Profits from every unsafe mine, every corner cut, every life lost. They're being held accountable. I manipulated you, used you, cost you your job and your home. But I also gave you something. Proof that one person choosing right can cascade into systemic change. You saved one life. That life exposed a conspiracy. That conspiracy's collapse saved hundreds more. Thousands probably as the reforms spread. That's the power of the oath. Not just healing bodies, but healing systems, making the world slightly less broken. I'll spend decades in prison. I deserve it. But I wanted you to know. Your choice mattered, more than you'll ever know. Thank you for being exactly who you are. Elena Silas folded the letter, put it in his desk drawer. Will she testify? He asked. She already has. Her evidence led to 43 arrests across 3 states. Mining executives, corporate lawyers, politicians who took bribes. The corruption went deeper than anyone knew. She helped expose all of it. In exchange for what? Reduced sentence, 15 years instead of 30. And she requested one thing, that we tell you what her evidence accomplished. She was very specific about that. After the agents left, Silas sat alone in his office, thought about Elena, about the woman who'd lied about everything, who'd been exactly the right person in exactly the right place to tear down an empire of corruption. He'd saved her. She'd saved hundreds, maybe thousands. That was mercy. That was the cascade. His father had been right. Time passed the way it does in small towns. Seasons cycling, children growing, the mines running safer. The clinic expanding. Silas hired 2 more doctors, built an addition for physical therapy, started treating black lung with new federal protocols. And slowly, carefully, over months and years, he and Kira built something that looked like partnership. Professional at first, then friendship, then something more. They married in the spring of 1976. Small ceremony, Union Hall again. Blackjack gave her away. Old Samuel was best man. Sarah Morrison from the Louisville Courier-Journal covered it. From war to peace, doctor and engineer unite, Harlan County. Their daughter was born in 1977. They named her Hope. Hope Sarah Crowley Maddox, a name that meant something, a name that carried weight. Hope grew up in the clinic, did her homework in the waiting room, helped file patient charts, watched her father stitch wounds and set bones, watched her mother redesign mine safety systems and testify before Congress. Learned that work could be purpose, that service could be legacy. She went to medical school, Johns Hopkins, graduated top of her class, could have gone anywhere, chose to come home. Someone needs to continue what you started, she told Silas. Might as well be family. The reforms spread beyond Harlan County. What Blackjack and Kira had negotiated became a model. The Mine Safety and Health Act of 1977 codified it into federal law. Mandatory inspections, whistleblower protections, penalties for companies that valued profit over safety. The law was imperfect, full of loopholes, but it saved lives, thousands of them, tens of thousands eventually. Because Silas had saved one woman who'd exposed a conspiracy that forced the system to change. Cascade. Ripples. One choice becoming many. 20 years passed like water. The clinic expanded. The mines got safer. The war became memory. What remained was work. Hard work. Honest work. But work where men went underground and came home. Where widows became rare. Where children grew up with fathers. Silas aged into it. Gray at the temples, lines around his eyes. Parkinson's started in his early 60s. Progressive, incurable. His hands began to shake. Surgeon's hands failing. He retired at 70, handed the clinic to Hope, watched her take over with pride. She was better than he'd been, sharper, more compassionate. She'd learned from his mistakes. He spent his final years gardening, reading his father's medical journals, sitting on the porch with Kira watching the mountains. They were old now, worn, but they'd won. They'd actually won. The mines were safer, the laws were stronger. The system had changed, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to matter. Silas died on a Tuesday in October 2019. Pneumonia complicated by Parkinson's. He went fast. Hope was with him. Kira held his hand. His last words were to his daughter. You're a good doctor. Better than me. Better than your grandfather. Make sure you choose mercy. Always. Even when it costs you. Then he was gone. The funeral was 3 days later. They held it at the Union Hall because the church wasn't big enough. 400 people came. Miners, families, union leaders. The current CEO of Consolidated Coal operating under federal oversight implementing policies Silas had helped design. Sarah Morrison came, retired now but still writing. She'd won a Pulitzer for her coverage of the coal wars. Old Samuel's grandson came. Samuel himself had died in 1998, age 94. The grand jury had declined to indict him for Webb's death, ruled self-defense. He'd lived his final years as a local hero. Blackjack Maddox came, 93 years old, wheelchair-bound. But present, he'd outlived everyone from the old war. Hope gave the eulogy. My father was a simple man. He didn't want to be a hero, didn't want to change the world. He just wanted to practice medicine, to heal people, to keep the oath. But sometimes simple choices have complicated consequences. In 1974, he found a woman bleeding out in mine shaft 7. His orders were to let her die. His oath said, save her. He chose mercy. That choice cost him his job, his home, almost cost him his life. But it started something, a chain of events that exposed corporate corruption. That ended a war. That changed laws. That saved thousands. My father used to say that medicine is buying time, creating conditions for healing. He bought time for Harlan County, for the mines, for the families. And in that time, healing happened. Not perfect healing, not complete healing, but real healing, the kind that lasts. She looked at the casket. He told me once that at the end, you remember who you saved, not who you lost, who you saved. He saved a woman named Elena Russo, an operative, a liar, someone using a stolen identity for corporate espionage. He saved her anyway because she was human and she needed help. That woman's evidence brought down 23 executives, exposed conspiracy in 3 states, forced reforms that saved thousands of miners across the country. He saved my mother from kidnappers. He saved my grandfather's life. He saved this county. That's his legacy, not the clinic, not the reforms, the choice to heal instead of harm, the choice to help instead of walk away. He made that choice every day for 45 years. And because he did, I'm here. You're here. We're all here. That's what love looks like. Not romance, not sentiment, action, choice, sacrifice. That's what Harlan County needs to remember. She stepped down. The hall was silent except for crying. Hard men with coal dust still in their lungs. Women who remembered the war, all of them crying for a doctor who'd chosen mercy. They buried him overlooking the valley. You could see Shaft 4 from there, sealed now. A memorial, 7 names carved in stone. Beside Silas's grave, a plaque. Below that, statistics. In the 10 years before Dr. Crowley's choice, 1964 to 1974, 143 mine deaths in Harlan County. In the 45 years after 1974 to 2019, mine deaths in Harlan County, 87% reduction. This memorial honors not who he was, but who lived because he chose his oath over orders. Kira stood at the grave after everyone left, 77 years old, white-haired, bent by time but unbroken. You did good, Silas. You bought us time. We used it well. She turned to leave, stopped, looked back. And for what it's worth, I loved you. From the moment you chose to save a stranger instead of following orders. I loved you for that choice. For all the choices after. For being the kind of man who heals instead of harms. Thank you for everything. She walked away, into a world that was better because one man had chosen mercy. 20 years later, 2039. The clinic bearing Silas's name treated its 1 millionth patient. Hope Crowley Maddox, now 62, cut the ribbon. Behind her photos on the wall, her father, her mother, her grandfather Black Jack, Sarah Morrison, Samuel Hastings, all gone now, all remembered. And at the bottom of the wall in a frame, a letter, the one Elena Russo had written from prison. Beside it, a plaque explaining Elena Russo, corporate operative, was saved by Dr. Silas Crowley on August 12, 1974. Her subsequent testimony exposed corporate conspiracy across 3 states, leading to 43 arrests and the Mine Safety and Health Act of 1977. She served 15 years in federal prison. Upon release in 1989, she became a corporate ethics consultant, helping design whistleblower protection programs. She died in 2018. Her will established a medical scholarship fund for rural doctors. To date, it has funded 127 medical school educations. 1 life saved, thousands of lives changed. This is the cascade of mercy. Hope stood in her father's clinic, in the place he'd built, in the legacy he'd left, and she understood finally what he'd been trying to teach her. Medicine wasn't just healing bodies, it was healing systems. It was creating conditions where life could flourish, where mercy could cascade, where one choice could ripple outward for decades. Her father had saved Elena. Elena had exposed Blackstone. Blackstone's fall had forced reforms. Reforms had saved thousands. Those thousands had families, children, grandchildren. A web of lives connected by one doctor's choice on one August morning. That was legacy. That was love. That was the oath kept. And it would continue. Generation after generation. Doctor after doctor. Patient after patient. Each person choosing mercy. Each choice cascading. Each life saved multiplying into many. The story didn't end. It never ended. Because that's what healing is, not a moment, but a choice made over and over. Day after day, the choice to help, to care, to save. The choice Silas Crowley made. The choice his daughter made. The choice every healer makes when they decide that lives matter more than orders. First, do no harm. Choose mercy over convenience. At the end, you'll remember who you saved, and you'll know it was worth it. All of it. Every sacrifice. Every cost. Every loss. Because you chose to heal. And in healing, you change the world, one life at a time.